Welcome to the Beyond the Horizons podcast, where we take a deeper dive into some of the key topics raised in the MSP Horizons report produced in conjunction with Canalys. In this episode, Enable VP of Community David Weeks discusses the changing role of the RMM and how it is increasingly being used as a control centre for data aggregation across your tech stack. Plus, we explore how developing an open ecosystem that allows a broad range of tools to easily talk to each other and share data is critical to developing efficiencies as well as helping MSPs move further upstream in search of new revenue streams. Welcome to another edition of the Beyond the Horizons podcast. Today I'm joined by David Weeks, our esteemed VP of Partner Experience, to talk. We're going to talk about open ecosystems today, Dave. And I know we've kind of been banding this conversation around for a little while, so I thought it'd be good to kind of commit it to video.
I think it makes sense. It's near and dear to my heart. So it's something I'm always happy to talk about.
So my opening kind of positioning on that really is that the MSP Horizons report that we did, obviously last year now the research was done. One of the things that came back, obviously it didn't see the RMM as we know it is going anywhere. There will always be a need for, or at the moment, over the next 3 to 5 years, certainly we don't see there not being a need for on-premise, and so on-premise support and that kind of stuff. So we don't see that. It doesn't really, MSPs aren't seeing that changing. What we are seeing is that the role of the role of the RMM is starting to change a little bit, and I think this is where we start to talk about the concept of the RMM as a data aggregator. Is this? Are you seeing this? Are you in your dealings with partners now out in the big wide world? Are you kind of this? Are you seeing this reflected in what they're saying?
Yeah, you know what? It's starting to come around. It's actually interesting. I've been saying this now for over a year, actually, about this fact that MSPs and service providers have this tooling that sits there that holds this massive amount of data. And we've all got to find a way to harness that data. And there's a few things that it does. You're right. It's a data aggregator, but it's also the ability to build pipeline and sales opportunity, to look at trending across your customer base, because a lot of what you see out there and a lot of service providers see, and, they might see, across my 50 customers, I'm seeing that the majority of them utilize X, Y, and Z. Well, that means your prospective customers probably have the exact same need as well, too. So utilizing and harnessing that is critical. Then figuring out how do we also utilize, as it does that aggregation of data, to push that out to decide, hey, what else can it do within my systems to help me be better, more efficient, drive more opportunity, more profitability, whatever it might be. So yes, there is a shift coming. The RMM will always be there. It's going to be really like the control panel, as we say, right? And it's going to be the one who kind of looks at all of this data and says, well, what do we do with it? But then you've got to help direct it the way that you want to maximize the benefit of all of that data.
And we're seeing, and it's this concept of, I suppose, that data in there is that then moves in more towards MSPs needing to have not just the RMM and all the bits and pieces that vendors like ourselves provide bolted into that, but then also having the ability to play nicely with a whole stack of other stuff within the industry, because we can't, I know this is a conversation that we've had, is that, you can't expect MSPs to not want to have other bits of software that don't necessarily sit under the umbrella of a specific, the same vendor as the RMM.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, no vendor can be one vendor to everybody, right? It just doesn't work that way. MSPs, as they move into more complex environments, more complex management, require a different level of tooling today. But the idea is that how do they all talk to each other? Right. And that's really the key. And it's not just integrations, right, that we hear about. It's about bi-directional discussions, utilizing things like AI and RPA and so forth to allow these tools to really understand what each do. And the way I kind of explain is you think about it almost like the RMM in that data aggregation becomes an orchestrator, right? And with that data, it says, okay, who's going to take the action? Is it going to be the RMM? And we report into the ticketing, the PSA, the ITSM, whatever it might be. Or are we going to take that and tell something out in the ecosystem, you go take the action and report back to me that the issue is resolved. And if not, I'll try another avenue. And so this is becoming complex for us as vendors, for us who provide these types of platforms and unified management. But it's also becoming complex for the service provider because as they see that their tooling grows, they have to find a way to allow that to work well together and have that synergy. If you don't, you're managing disparate tools, your tech utilization goes down, you're not managing to the level of your customers' expectations. So all of these areas have to be considered as we think about, kind of this 360 view, or as I say, the circle of life when you think about your tool stack. It always has to come back around to zero and be able to continue that circle and continue that discussion.
Mm-hmm. And this is a kind of slightly contentious point, I suppose, how damaging really is it for MSPs to just be siphoned, if you like, into just using a specific set of tool sets, that a specific tool stack that an RMM vendor wants you to use?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's you always have to ask the question: are you getting best of breed? Do you have the versatility that you need? If you get into a single stack like that and suddenly you realize maybe one or two pieces of the tooling don't work for you, now you've lost buying power out with other vendors, right? And now you're having to break that up and figure out a way to make it all work together. Look, like I said at the start, there's no one vendor who can provide everything. It just doesn't work. And the way that security and cloud management and all of these areas of professional services, right, and augmentation and co-managed are starting to model out with service providers, it's becoming more and more of a need to be able to have that versatility to say, okay, what is it that I require? As I said, the co-managed, when we look at that, or co-partnering with internal IT, there's going to be scenarios where they say, use our tooling and have it talk to yours. So if you're in a single stack in a closed ecosystem, that's extremely difficult to allow that to happen. And now you're jeopardizing your opportunity or your relationships. And are you managing to the edges? Like if you're stuck in a set of tooling, what are you missing? Because you're probably missing something out there that you're not seeing that other tooling would be able to provide you.
And I think it's interesting because you start talking about co-manage and co-partnering. Is this, I suppose, endemic of the challenge that MSPs will get as they move further upstream? Because obviously, if you are, for example, if you're managing if you're looking after much smaller companies, much smaller sort of SMBs, I suppose, and I wouldn't get into SMEs, that's going too far up market. But if you're looking after very small SMBs or single person companies, then maybe that's not such an issue. But once you start getting into those kind of further up market SMEs into bigger organizations, that's going to be surely that becomes more of an issue, doesn't it? Because you're going to be exposed to a broader set of tool bases.
Well, absolutely. And you're also going to be subjected to their buying power and their requirements, right? So, I mean, they may have gone out and negotiated with another vendor because of their size, because they're 2, 3, 4,000 users, right? And they have a preferred solution that they utilize internally. Coming in and saying, well, break that contract, get out, you have to use mine. It's not going to work, right? And so you've got to, if you don't have that flexibility and the ability to say, that's okay, bring your own tooling, bring your own devices, bring your own needs, all inserted into my ecoverse and my ecosystem, will allow them to talk to each other. We share the data and the results, and happy days. Everybody moves on from there and they get what they need. That's being a partner. That's not being somebody who comes in and says, it's my way or no way, because that's never going to win you a lot of business.
And I mean, yeah, you touch on the ecoverse concept, which is obviously the way that we're positioning that as a business. I mean, how are we going? What's your experience of how we're going about kind of looking at those individual tools that we need to be building those relationships with?
Yeah, you know what it is? We're opening the doors and we're saying, come, right? The door is open. work with us, partner with us, right? Be a part of the ecoverse. We're not saying we're closing it and walling off the garden, right? And nobody else is allowed in. What we're doing is we're saying, okay, listen, as our partners, right, across the world, come to us and tell us who you work with on a regular basis. And let's find a way that we can have some synergy with them as well, too. Like I said earlier, we basically want to be almost like a control panel that allows you to utilize what you need. And listen, all of your eggs in one basket is always a risk as well, too, right? So it's single point of failure. Even though it might be what we know, we always call single pane of glass or SPOG, can also mean a single point of failure. That versatility allows you to segregate a bit, have everything talk to each other, but also put your own protection and risk mitigation around each of those areas as well, too. So there's a whole bunch of benefits to both. Yes, I can go to one vendor and say, give me everything. And yeah, I'm going to have buying power, right? And that's great. I will. But again, I'm probably not getting the best of breed tools in that whole package that I want. And that's what MSPs have to think about today. Look, if they came to us and there was a certain tooling and a service provider said to me, and I've done this on numerous occasions in meetings, and they've said, well, you have this solution and I want to take a look at it. And I said, well, it's not fit for you. It's not fit for your type of business, right? So don't bother looking at it. But here's who I would recommend that you go look at. And your RMM or your security products or your data backup will talk to that solution, right? And that's really as we all work collectively together in the industry, as vendors and as IT service providers and MSPs, right? We can collectively win by building out ecosystems that allow us all to have that ability to mitigate our risk, drive optimum opportunity, right? And at the same time, drive efficiency, but utilize best of breed. So we're all taking care of ourselves.
I suppose ultimately it's about empowering choice, isn't it? As well, that's really what it boils down to. Yeah, I mean, also from our perspective, it's kind of once you start opening up those, I suppose, the APIs and making it available, then there is, there are infinite possibilities for how and who we can. I want to move away, and you touched on this earlier. It's kind of like, let's move away from the concept of integration, because it's not just an integration; it's way more than an integration, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. Look, integration is, is the initial component of it, right? To allow something to talk to each other. After that, integration with the APIs, it's then what can we extract? What can we do? How can we talk? I mean, look at some of the ones that we've done out there with PSAs and so forth, where, we've got AI and we're talking back and forth and the AI is helping to make decisions. Like, that's the infinite possibilities that we see, how we can harness this new technology that's out there to allow us to say, okay, you know what? I don't need to put a human in front of everything, because that's not scalable either, right? The systems have a lot of power that can be harnessed, and most service providers don't necessarily harness all the power of their tooling. I think we all know that. But as we start to bring in things like AI and so forth, that will naturally pull the power out for you and give you the results that you need. And that's a win for everybody, right? Humans make mistakes, right? That's okay. We understand that. And that's not an issue, but we have to think about how we can utilize some of that other technology that's out there to allow us to drive forward at a faster pace. And more importantly, bring us scalability, Pete, right? I mean, like I said, we all know there's still a labor shortage. It's getting better, but we can't just throw a human at everything. That's not a way to run a business. And so if we can get this working right through the ecoverse and the ecosystem, now you start to collectively take the power of that ecosystem and allow it to do a lot of the management for you. And look at your end customer. All they care is they stay up and running. They're efficient. They're productive, right? They don't care how you do it. So utilize those best tools, get it into the right ecosystem. And I guarantee that as service providers, they'll absolutely see a huge benefit to their business and their end customers' businesses.
And that is just going back to that kind of concept of you were talking about the AI. I mean, I know, we've been talking about what we're building into our AIs in terms of looking at our own system, even if it's like the stuff going on with Cove. But once you start opening that up and you're able to pull in data from different areas and then the AI itself becomes much more powerful. I mean, yes, of course, if you're just you can have a closed system and you can have an AI within the closed system and it will produce results. But if you're pulling it in from a much broader technology base, I suppose, then that AI in itself becomes much more powerful and much more kind of informative for your business as well, doesn't it?
Well, it is. And when you look collectively at something like an ecosystem versus a single stack from a single vendor, that vendor will probably aggregate data in a certain way. So you don't get the variety of aggregation of data either, right? When you open an ecosystem, everybody records and collects data differently. And you're right, as we start to layer on those things like RPA and AI, that can now look at all of that and say, well, let me give it back to you in a cohesive message, or to your customer in a cohesive message. So, I mean, we're just scratching the surface of this today, right? Mm-hmm. And it's only going to continue to roll forward. And that's really where, you know, when we made the decision as an organization to say, open the doors, right? Take down the walls, come on in and let's work together. Listen, there's enough business to go around for all of us as vendors and as service providers, right? And the more that we work together, the more that we all win. And that's really what we're all trying to do in the end, is drive our businesses forward.
I always like it when I sit at events and you bring that particular subject up. There is enough business to go around, and how, you know, you're out there, you're the one that's out there with partners. You see what's going on in the coalface. How are our partners kind of reacting to this? How people in the industry, how do they view this in terms of opening up and bringing bringing these kind of new partners and new, I almost said integrations. It's kind of new. There's kind of this very much more open philosophy. How are they reacting to that?
You know what? They're excited. And it's not just our customers, it's vendors as well, right? I mean, I'm out meeting with a lot of other vendors who have heard what we're doing, and they're coming to us proactively and saying, well, how do I be a part of this, right? We all have our own channels that we work within, right? We all have our own target markets, and ecosystem allows us to share some of that as well too, which is a really neat initiative. And it's almost like crowdsourcing opportunity is the way that I say it. And the more that we open that up, and the more that we're all willing to work together, it's a win. I mean, look at, we have integrations and we have API calls that are open, and we have people in our ecosystem who are direct competitors of ours. Why? Our customers want choice. They prefer that tool, use that tool, right? And I think that's where we're a little bit different. But no, ultimately out on the road, and you're right, I'm out every day. It's excitement, right? It is absolute excitement when they hear what we're doing and they understand the vision. They say, you know what, this is actually what we've been looking for. We were going to build it ourselves, but if you have the ability to build it and allow us to bring what we need into it, that's a win-win. Yeah. And how do you, I suppose this is kind of, again, not contentious, but possibly a slightly tricky question to answer, but how do you see the market in this perspective, in terms of, you know, different vendors and products working together? How do you see that develop to the benefit of MSPs? How do you see that kind of panning out over the next 3 to 5 years? I think that you're going to see, and I think this happens a lot in our industry, is right now we're kind of at a tipping point, or even almost say a quagmire of what's my better option? Do I single source or do I go open ecosystem, right? And the channel is going to decide that, right? The channel is in, service providers are going to decide it. And I think the tide's going to turn very quickly, and they're going to ask all of their vendors to be a part of these ecosystems, right? And those ecosystems don't end with one vendor. It's cross ecosystem in the end, whenever you think about it, right? And what we'll start to see is this collective global ecosystem that now service providers can decide, where do I fit in? How deep and how wide do I want to go? And that's just giving them choice. And when you discuss it that way with them in the market, that's where the excitement comes in, is give me more choice. Don't limit my choice.
Yeah, let me build the tool set I need to do the job that I want to do, and therefore, because you're not restricting what the MSP is able to do or able to work with. You know, they're able to work with anyone they want to, because they can build the tool set that they need.
Correct.
And that all then effectively bolts into, you know, the central point of the RMM.
Well, and what their customers need, right? I mean, look, there's a lot more regulation and compliance out there now. When we look at things like compliance as a service, it drives particular tool sets or tooling or types of tooling that are required. Listen, you're not going to get a lot of that from a single vendor. There's a lot we don't do, nor will probably ever do, right? But if we can allow you to bring that in, so that's part of your management and risk mitigation strategy, then we should be doing that for you.
And also, I mean, just extrapolating that point out a bit, that it's not just that we don't do them or we possibly won't do them, but it enables us not to get involved in doing some of those things, which enables us therefore to make our RM focus on what we do. It's kind of, you know, I've heard this a number of times, of people say, stay in your lane, you know. So if you stay in your lane and be the best possible thing in your lane, but open yourself up to what you can integrate with, then, it's a win-win, really, isn't it?
It is. And that's what it's all about, right? That is, ecosystem in that term's been around for a very long time. But we have new capabilities now to make it even better and to do it much faster. And that's what I think we're trying to do. And I think that's the difference people are going to see going forward, is just how much power this is going to bring them. And power obviously will bring that opportunity and the ability for them to drive their businesses forward in the way that they want.
Excellent. As ever, Mr. Weeks, it's been a fascinating conversation. And again, I feel it could have sort of, like, if I wasn't just focused on this particular topic, we could have drifted on for at least another half an hour. But no, that's great. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to speaking to you again about another topic.
I love it. Thanks, Pete. We'll chat soon.
All right, take care.